It's your girl Sash, and I am back, y'all. It's been a lot going on, but we are back and we are better. So welcome back to another episode of Things of That Nature. And y'all already know what time it is. It's time to grow. So let's get straight into the episode, you guys. I know it's been a lot. I know it's been a long time since you guys have seen me. I missed y'all too. We appreciate you guys' support, your constant words of encouragement. We really appreciate it. I hope you guys are still tuning into our old episodes, investing in yourself, relationships, and also the healing and dating phase. So just stay tuned, guys. We are going to bring more and more content for you coming soon. So guys, this episode, I kind of want to just be open and honest and just really talk about transparency and vulnerability. So really just taking off that mask that a lot of us wear, especially in the Black community. We are so big on wearing the mask and not being open and honest about how we feel about certain things, our emotions, things we struggle with, trauma, habits, toxic traits, just all of it. I think for me, the biggest thing about being vulnerable that I've learned and just being transparent is that sometimes we can be very dependent on someone or something. And kind of what I mean by that is being dependent upon like that person, especially like if you were in a relationship with them for a long time, or you've been friends with them for a long time, or you guys were partners in a business. Sometimes God will allow that person to move forward or to go into another path in their life just so that you can go towards what it is that you're supposed to do. But if you're kind of not in the moment, it kind of feels like it's disappointment that comes with that. And I think we're not very open and vocal about it because we think, oh, I might be doing too much, or that person really didn't want to be with me, no way. They didn't want to be friends with me, no way. They didn't want to be partners with me, no way, no. And those emotions do come. I mean, because especially when I'm talking about y'all were doing great. Things were going great with that business. Things were going great in that relationship. But sometimes people grow apart. Sometimes you have to come back after the fact, or it may take time for you and that person just to really have that conversation later on down the line in order for you to just resolve everything. But you have to deal with those emotions even if it's in private, whether it's going to therapy and dealing with that disappointment, because I don't think we talk about disappointment enough, especially when it comes to relationships and friendships, because you're going to get disappointed sometimes. A lot of times you're not going to get that answer that you always want, or things are not going to always work out the way that you want them to work out. But how you deal with those emotions determine how you will go forward. I mean, sometimes you may feel anger towards that person or that friend. It may be just for a moment, but it happens. So you take that to God. You may feel sadness. I know for me, especially when you become dependent upon someone, it's kind of hard to move past. It's kind of hard to move forward. So you just try to bury that dream, or bury that idea, or bury that perception of maybe I don't need to have a relationship, or maybe I don't need to have friends. You just start to beat yourself up. And I think that's something that we should try to learn to deter from, because you don't beat yourself up just because that relationship or that friendship may be on the rocks right now, or you may feel like I can't do this by myself, but you can. So I just really want to encourage that part, especially when it comes to just you understanding that vulnerability part of having to deal with not being able to depend on someone or something. Whether it may be you having to take a break from your business because you're having to rebrand or figure out how things are supposed to look, or how God really wants them to look attached to whatever it is that's to his will, that's okay. And you have to take a step back. But once you dealt with those emotions, come back and start again, start different, start with God, start from experience. Don't take what happened with that person or with that business venture or with that disappointment and bring it into how you're going to move now. Because how you deal with your emotions and when you're taking off that mask and that vulnerability reflects how you move going forward, especially when you're trying to be more open and transparent. Another thing, guys, is something that I'm learning in my vulnerability that we have to be really intentional about is not running from our emotions. I can really speak for me. I am the type of person who will suppress until eventually sometimes it may turn into me being depressed. And I really have to make sure that I am finding different outlets for myself. Or now I've really started journaling, y'all. Like, I've never been a journaling person because I'm like, why do I gotta write this down? But it's healthy. It's a great outlet for you versus you doing something else that you know that is only going to bring you up here for a moment, then you're back down having to still face those emotions. So I'm trying to learn how to not run from my emotions, y'all. Like, if I'm feeling sad, actually give myself space and time to either cry or to feel that sadness. If I'm feeling grief, give myself time to feel that grief. And grief doesn't necessarily have to be attached to someone or a loved one passing away, but it could be the grief of a relationship that didn't work out, the grief of a friendship that didn't work out, the grief of just that business or that rejection of that opportunity or that job that you really, really wanted. So I just really been trying to deal with that, because in 2023, I went through a lot of highs and I went through a lot of lows, and I didn't really allow myself to feel those emotions. I remember right before the new year, I actually took time in my room, and I had just finished watching a sermon, and I just boohooed, y'all, like bawled. And I was like, God, like, why this and why that? I feel this, I feel that. I hate that this happened. Was this because of me? Like, just different things. And I really, really had to break down to get to that point where God was like, let me comfort you. You've been trying to handle these emotions on your own, trying to be tough girl, trying to be superwoman, trying to think you could do it on your own, but you needed me. And I think that's another powerful thing about vulnerability and being transparent and honest with yourself, is that you're able to open up more to God, because we try to hide emotions that we're feeling from Him because we're like, well, He knows all. Why do I have to tell Him? But He's the type of God that He wants you to come to Him. He wants you to have that genuine heart to be like, God, I just want to pour all this stuff out to you. Because why would He say, cast your burdens upon me, cast what you're feeling? And He knows every tear that you cry. So why not open up to Him? And outside of just even God, building that community of people you can go to, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a girlfriend, just a mentor, accountability partner, whoever that is, and being open with them, like, yeah, this is how I feel about the situation. Now, I'm not saying with vulnerability and transparency, you can't be optimistic, because you can. But in that moment when those feelings are still fresh, be vulnerable, be open, be honest with yourself and say, I am not okay. I'm dealing with X, Y, and Z emotions. It's so much going on. I'm tired. I wish things were different. I wish X, Y, and Z, this would have worked out with this person, or this business venture would have been further along. I was supposed to be doing this. Why you haven't been doing it? But not to the point where you're beating yourself down to where you can't get up. And I think these past couple of weeks into the new year, that's what I was doing to myself. Although I was being transparent, I was doing it to a point where I was beating myself up to the point where I felt like I couldn't get back up. To where I'm like, Sasha, you got to get back up again. You got to start recording again. You got to start making content again. You got to start being open to life and getting out there and not allowing your emotions to stop you, but not also running from your emotions. So not saying that once you start being vulnerable that those emotions aren't still going to come, y'all, because they are. You're going to constantly feel emotions daily, because we are emotional beings. Like, you might just get upset in traffic. Like, it's just so many emotions that come with us, like whether it's sadness, happiness, anxiousness. It's just so many emotions, but don't run from your emotions. Like, take time to actually be in those emotions. And then as far as like really, really being transparent with yourself, is learning in those moments of vulnerability and learning in those moments of transparency that this is my truth. This is who I am. But that does not mean that I can't improve, that things can't change for the better, because they can. I think a lot of times when we're being vulnerable and we're being transparent with our loved ones and other people, that we forget that we got to be transparent and honest with ourselves. you got to be open and honest with you. Like, how am I feeling about this situation? How can I deal with this trauma? Am I actually dealing with this trauma the way that I'm supposed to be dealing with this trauma? Or am I just really sweeping it under the rug because that's what I learned? That's what I was taught. Am I steering away from different things that I used to do that I know for a fact are not benefiting me anymore? Even just when you know you made a mistake, whether you see your part in that incident that happened with your friend or with that relationship or with that business partner, and you seeing your part that you played in it and holding yourself accountable. I think it's a difference between accountability with vulnerability and accountability and attacking yourself in vulnerability. Because I feel like that's where the low self-esteem and the not being able to go forward, because you could be honest with yourself and honest with other people and holding them accountable, but it's a way to do it. I think it still has to be some type of level of empathy that you have to have for yourself when you're being vulnerable and you're holding yourself accountable and you're being transparent. Because you could be like, Sasha, like, you shouldn't have did that, man. But going forward, how are you going to do better in this? You could have communicated that better. You could have just said no. You should have knew what you wanted. But growing up, for me, I've always been like very, very naive because of the way that I grew up. My imagination was something that was really, really big to me because I always tried to look at the light at the end of the tunnel and see that things were going to get better. And I always was trying to be the peacemaker, which means sometimes me being biased or trying to make everybody happy while, sometimes you can't make everybody happy. And I didn't learn that really until recently, that sometimes being truly honest is really being open and not trying to spare someone's feelings. Because that's something that I always thought was protecting that person that I love, that was love. But love really is being, like I said, transparent and being open with that person, being truly honest with them about what it is that's going on. If they ask you something and then they want to answer, instead of you just sugarcoating it and putting rainbows and flowers on it, you telling them what it is directly, but you're still being empathetic and being kind and being compassionate, but you're being direct and you're letting them know what it is, so that way it won't be any level of uncertainty that comes in that situation. Because a lot of times when we think we're protecting someone, in all actuality, we're really hurting that person. So being transparent sometimes means telling a person sometimes what they don't want to hear and telling yourself what you don't want to hear. But seeing how you can get better with it, how that relationship can grow from it. Because a lot of great relationships come from two people actually being honest and transparent and open. I've heard somebody tell me recently that I'd rather you tell me the truth than to try to cover it up with lies, because that's not going to do anything but make me look at you differently. So you gotta be open and you gotta be honest with yourself, because sometimes we can choose to be blind with some stuff that's going on with ourselves. And sometimes it's not intentional, because once you develop certain habits and certain ways of living, it's so hard to get out of that. It's so hard to shift somebody's brain and somebody's thinking into a new way of life and to actually develop your character in a way, because you're so blinded and you're so fixated on a specific way of thinking, a specific mindset. But you got to give yourself a chance to grow and develop. And with that growing and develop means, hey, I got to be open and transparent and honest with myself. Outside of just the vulnerability part of me feeling my emotions, I got to look at myself in the mirror sometimes like, Sasha, you know you was wrong. You know you were wrong. And how are we going to go forward with this? How are we going to play our part in this? How are we going to hold ourselves accountable? But how are we going to learn from this? How is this going to better your character as a person? Like, are you going to continue doing this instead of just being who you need to be? And then being open and honest with God. Like, God, I've struggled with X, Y, Z. You know I struggle with this, but I struggle with it and I don't know where to go from here. The person told me I hurt them, but how can I go forward about earning their trust or trusting myself? because I'm making so many mistakes, I'm like, do I even trust myself in a friendship? Do I even trust myself in a relationship? How can I get better and be better as a better friend, a better girlfriend, a better spouse, a better partner, a better business partner, whatever it is, just being open and honest about that. And just being okay with sometimes not having to sugarcoat things and actually being direct. I think for me, I always have been kind of rocky in that area. Like I struggle with it still. When a person asks me, well, Sasha, what do you want? It's hard because for so long, when you're so used to just making sure everybody else is happy, giving everybody what they want, saying what everybody wants to hear, you get caught up in that. But I'm trying my best now to unlearn that, because that's not good in certain instances, especially as you meet other people and you grow different relationships. Everybody's way of communicating is different. Some people want it direct and straight to the point. Some people do want you to rub their back and be like, it's going to be all right. And, but some people want it straight to the point. Like, tell me what it is and tell me what it ain't. So that's something I'm trying to learn how to do, especially when you're being transparent, is being straight to the point, not being naive and trying to dress it up and make it real for them, but really be open and honest. I mean, it's hard. I'm not going to lie, because when you grow those certain habits, it's safe. It's something that you're used to. It's hard to get away from the familiar and go to something that's uncomfortable and is not familiar. But in order for you to grow, in order for you to accelerate, elevate, you have to be holding yourself accountable, and you have to be transparent, and you have to be open, and you have to be honest. I mean, like I said, now that I'm older, I see how important it is to be open and transparent, because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or ruin a relationship with somebody that you love. Like, you don't want that. And a lot of people, their biggest thing is they look at your actions and also your words, but mostly your actions. So that's why you have to look at yourself in the mirror and really be transparent and see. And even be transparent with that person. Like, I think sometimes we be so quick to hold ourselves accountable in certain situations, and being transparent with ourselves and being honest and open and vulnerable, that with other people, we don't want to hold them accountable. So when they come and bring and say, well, I feel like you did X, Y, and Z and it hurt my feelings, you'll be like, yeah, you're right, it's my fault. But instead of being like, well, in this instance, did you think about, well, you played a part in this as well, and holding them accountable and being open and honest? Because if you're not holding each other accountable, then it's going to feel like it's only one side of accountability, one side fault. You know what I'm saying? And especially if it's going to be a healthy and effective relationship or friendship or partnership, there's got to be some level of transparency between the both of you, not just one person holding the other person accountable and being honest and being like, hey, this is what it is. I didn't like this, blah, blah, blah. You should have just said this, versus you coming on the side and be like, hey, well, I apologize for that. I hold myself accountable. I take all the accountability for that. But I felt like this when you did X, Y, and Z. So just making sure you're both holding each other accountable, because you don't really want that. Now, understand that now if later on y'all come back on better terms, even after you being transparent, from what we learned, it's still a possibility that you guys can be on better terms and move forward and be better, but it's not a guarantee. I think that's something that I've learned in being vulnerable with a person, or even being transparent with someone, that they may respect it, but that does not mean that they're going to be ready to move forward as far as the relationship or the friendship. They may be like, I appreciate you for being open and honest with me, but I don't think this friendship is going to work the way that we want it to work. I'm glad that you learn to be more open and honest and vulnerable, showing your emotions and letting me know that you're struggling with things instead of keeping it from me or projecting it on me. But I don't know what the future holds. And sometimes, as the person on the other side, and me being honest and telling you I've been that person on the other side where somebody is telling me that, you have to be okay with it. Because guess what? You're putting in the work to be better and to build your character. But just because you're doing it doesn't mean that people are going to see those results or that progress right away. And that doesn't mean that they're going to automatically just hop back on board because you're making such progress. For some people, the situation is still fresh. It's still new. That doesn't mean it's not fresh to you. It's just because you were on the other side and you've been held accountable for whatever it is that you're doing. You're like, okay, how can I learn from this mistake? How can I better myself to be a better friend to this person and to the next person? Or better myself to be a better partner in a relationship? What can I do? And it's not that you're not paying attention to the situation at hand. You're just trying to make it better. But sometimes the way to make it better is to take a step back and understand that when that person is ready, that there is no guarantee that you guys will move back into that same relationship or that same friendship the same. But maybe it may be different. Maybe the roles may change. You never know. But transparency sometimes is hard. Vulnerability is hard because we don't have those safe spaces, or we feel like we don't have those safe spaces. Even when it comes to God, I've seen plenty of times where I've walked around for so long basically lying to God. You know, I'm saying I got the faith, but in my heart, I'm doubting him. I'm not being open and honest like, God, I really don't believe that you're doing that, but help my unbelief. I don't believe that you really gonna do what you said you're gonna do, but I know what you've done in the past, so help me to remind me of that. And I just think that if we can be vulnerable with God and transparent with God and transparent with ourselves and vulnerable with ourselves, it helps our other relationships. Because if we can't be open and honest with God, even about the simplest things like, God, I just wish that relationship would have worked out. I wish that friendship would have worked out. Why did it have to turn out like this? Why do I have to do this by myself? Why I have to step out and do this by myself? I thought I was supposed to have another person with me by my side going through this journey with me, but you just took them away. Why? And being honest with God about how we feel. Having an open conversation like how I'm talking to you guys now. I've started doing that more with God. You can still journal. Like I still journal to God and write letters to God. But talking to him like this, for some reason, when I'm done, the exchange that happens in that moment it's unexplainable. Because I'm able to leave everything out. And sometimes we need those types of relationships where we could just lay it all out on the table. No judgment. You going ahead and you just telling me what it is that's going on. How did I hurt you? How can we go forward with this? What is it that you need from me that I haven't been giving you? But we're so caught up in, I don't want to add to this person's struggles that they already, the burdens they already got. But that's where we have to check ourselves and see, why do I feel like I'm a burden to someone that I call my friend? Why do I feel like a burden to a God who looks high, sits low, and helps everybody? Why? And that's where we have to fix our logic in our mind, because some of those things stem from past stuff and we're projecting it on that other person. But that other person is like, I'm here. Like, I'm taking the time. I'm trying to make the effort. And sometimes I think in my vulnerability, my transparency now, like I've caught myself really breaking down because yes, hold yourself accountable, but it's been so many times where I'm like, I've tried and I've tried my hardest to do this. It wasn't my intention. But sometimes you still have to check yourself. But it's so hard when you feel like, I feel like I've done so many other good things. Why does this one big thing stand out? But you always got to take the bad with the good. But always remember, don't check no one else until you check yourself. That's the biggest part about being transparent. 1, check yourself, because you can't check no one else. Check yourself first. That's why I said, when you see yourself as a burden to your friends or your family, why is that? Yes, they may have stuff going on, but if they'll drop everything at the end, if you're not telling them what's going on, how do you expect them to make an effort to make things better? That's why you have to be vulnerable. You may not want to because you're like, I don't want to seem like I'm doing too much. That's the biggest thing, like, I struggle with. Why open up? I won't feel like I'm doing too much. Why talk about what I got going on? Because she got XYZ going on. He got XYZ going on. He worried about this. He worried about that. Why even open up? But it's not about that. You just have to be open to it and just do it. Lay it all out. Be like, hey, can we talk? And I just want us to just lay everything out on the table and just be open and transparent and honest. And then whatever we decide after we leave this room is whatever we decide. And I think there is there's power in vulnerability and transparency, but most definitely vulnerability. Because when you really, really open yourself up and you really, really take time to put yourself in another person's shoes and you understand their thought process about things and their perspective, you see things differently. But if you're so fixated on what they did and you're not able to look at you. But it's all about how you put that effort in. Because when it comes to vulnerability and transparency, you're taking off that mask. And you're being honest with yourself, like, yeah, I can't do this no more. I can't be with this person no more. I can't allow this anymore. But that doesn't mean that I hate them or I dislike them, but I just can't. And it is still your choice. But there's power in vulnerability when you're able to do it when no one is watching and when people are watching. That you're able to be transparent when someone's watching and when someone's not watching. Because I think the biggest thing that ruins our outlook on vulnerability, our outlook on relationships, is when we try to bring other people into our situations. How do you feel about this? Yeah, I feel like she shouldn't have did that. Yeah, you right. So now I'm finna go cuss her out because you told me to. That's not the way that it should be done when you're communicating. Or yeah, I feel like she played with you the woo because if that was me, I wouldn't have done, but you weren't in that situation. So just being careful about who you're taking advice to and who you're being vulnerable with. Because there can be cases where people use what you were open and vulnerable about against you. And I know sometimes that can cause us to shut off from God, shut off from ourselves, shut off from people, isolate ourselves because we've been vulnerable. And people use it against us. But y'all are just really just understanding. I mean, it's not easy. When I tell you being open and honest, it's hard. It's hard because you feel like, am I going to ruin relationships being open and vulnerable? If I open up about me struggling with this, is it going to make her not want to be with me? It's going to make him not want to talk to me anymore. But like I said, there's power in it. And if that person can't truly accept it. I mean, I was talking to somebody about this the other day. They wanted to have a conversation with somebody about something that had been bothering them. They asked the person, can we talk? I got some stuff I want to get off my chest. And the person didn't respond in the way that they wanted them to respond. They didn't respond in a timely manner. Let's say that. They never responded to the text. And one of the things that I said to the person was, you reached out. That's step one. Now, step two is giving them that time, because you can't control when that person is ready to talk. Because just because you're ready to talk, don't mean that other person is ready to talk. So this is the time where you have to take a step back and evaluate, how am I going to be open and transparent and vulnerable in a situation to where it can hopefully lead to a better and effective relationship going forward. Instead of pulling all these things that this person has done in such a bad way to so where you could just throw it at them, but in a way where it's like, when you did this made me feel like this. And as a result, I started to feel like our friendship was not where it needed to be. And I know it's hard sometimes. That's why I say vulnerability. You gotta face those emotions. And I think if we don't face those emotions before we go in to being transparent with somebody, then it can cause for projection to come into play. Because now I'm projecting on you because of how I feel. Although your actions cause that emotion, that still doesn't give me the right to project on you how I'm feeling. Because I'm the controller of my emotions. I can control my emotions. And my mom used to always tell me that every action doesn't require a reaction. So when you give that ammunition to that situation or that action from that person, it causes it to make you feel like, now I gotta start using this person as my punching bag, and that's not how it should be. I know that person was wrong because I've been the other person on both sides. I've been the person that has been transparent about something that hurt my feelings or held somebody accountable or been vulnerable, and it got me to a place where the person still didn't understand where I was coming from. And I had to sit in that, and I had to deal with that. Because guess what? I communicated it, but I can't control how that person receives it. But I still was in a position to let them know, hey, this is how I feel about X, Y, and Z. And when you did this made me feel like this. And then I've also been on the other side to where somebody has told me, when you did this, it made me feel like you basically was saying you didn't be X, Y, Z. So from a person that has been on both sides, I've seen so many different outcomes. And I feel like some of them were effective and some of them weren't, because for me, I know when somebody is telling me or holding me accountable about something, my level of vulnerability shuts down. Because now I'm like, I gotta be nonchalant. I gotta feel like whatever. It's not no genuine to it, because I'm just thinking, well, what about the good I did? Instead of being in the moment being like, you know what? Sasha, being open and transparent with myself, you shouldn't have done that. You were wrong. And no matter how you try to dress it up or fix it up, you were wrong. And what may be best for that person or for that situation is to you to remove yourself while that person is trying to figure out how to navigate that incident or what happened or what you did. And when they're ready, there's a possibility, but there's not no guarantee that y'all will go right back to where you were, and you can't expect that. And that's okay. And lastly, I feel like, and this is something that I really, really have been honing in on and learning more and more, that although you're being transparent and open with yourself and you're connecting with your emotions and you're being vulnerable and you're being open and you're experiencing different emotions and you're allowing yourself to feel those emotions, you're allowing yourself to cry, that you've got to honestly forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for the things that you allowed. Forgive yourself for those mistakes that you made in those friendships and those relationships that could have been better. But we can't hound on or be so focused on if a woulda, shoulda, coulda. But how and what and why. the how isn't like, how can I be better as a person? How can I build from this? How can I learn from this? The what happened, and with the why was this? Why did God allow this? That what happened, and what am I supposed to learn? What is it that I'm supposed to take from this? What is it that I'm supposed to find within myself, or change within myself, or learn to unlearn within myself? Because I feel like if we focus on, well, if they would have, or if I would have, that's when we start getting that beating ourselves up mode, instead of being better and starting from experience. Anytime somebody messes up when they cook, say for instance you're at a restaurant and you order something and the person gets their plate and they're like, this is not what I ordered. And all the waitress can do is say, I am so sorry. Only thing they do is open the honest. I thought this went to another table. I thought this went to another table. I didn't know that. I forgot. It's just so much going on. And they're being open. And they're also being vulnerable because they have a lot going on. But they're also still trying to piece everything together and make sure that everything is correct and right. And then they made an error. And then they made a mistake. All they can do is say, hey, I'm going to take this plate and I'm going to get you your right order. Only thing that you can do when you make an error or a mistake is to say, hey, I'm sorry. I apologize that I made you feel that way. I didn't know I made you feel that way. And that's on my part because I chose to think that everything was be blind to it because I thought, it was okay. And to being like, if you will allow going forward, I want to earn your trust. So still presenting that solution and still being open and honest about it. Because at the end of the day, you can only just try to make it right. And it's still on the other person on whether or not what they want to do going forward. So you guys know, we try to do a little segment where we do a place where we feel like we need a little bit more nurturing, or we feel like we're growing, and a place that we feel like could use a little bit more watering. So for me, a place that I feel like I could use a little bit more nurturing in is being more vulnerable in situations where I'm being held accountable, and just not allowing me being nonchalant to get in the way of me actually listening and understanding what the person is trying to say about how I made them feel about something, and then vice versa. A place where I feel like I'm growing more in is really, really, really learning how to communicate and be vocal about what it is that I want, how I feel about something, my perspective on something, instead of just, I got to make sure that this person is happy or they get to say what they want to say and I just listen. I don't say anything, but still adding my part and still being vocal and open and honest, and not allowing just because of the situation or the person to cause me to just shut down to the point where I just be like, you know what, it's whatever you want. But me communicating, you know what, this is what I want. And this is how I feel like we could fix the situation and my perspective on it and just different things. And then a place where I feel like I could use a little bit more watering is truly forgiving myself to the point where I don't allow it to stop me from living my life. So if something happens or if I make a mistake, to not beat myself up to the point where I feel like, well, maybe I start thinking like, maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I'm not meant for this, and just allowing it to be a learning experience and forgive myself and not beat myself up. So that's just something that I really, really, really need a little bit more watering on. For sure. But just for me, this last thing I just want to say to y'all, a few takeaways for real, is just work on being honest with yourself. Just be honest. Like, no, I'm not the best person to tell secrets to. I need to work on holding water a little bit better. But just going step by step and not rushing yourself just because other people are in different places as far as their vulnerability or their transparency, as far as how they're being open and how they're, being mature in their feelings and their emotional intelligence. Doesn't mean that you necessarily have to rush to get there, but just take those steps. But still thank those people who, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, pushed you to be more accountable when you were blind. Because sometimes we were thinking it was okay. Because we chose not to tell the whole truth or be honest or be vulnerable because we feel like it was going to make us weak, or we feel like that person really didn't care. But it's a struggle. But it's a struggle because it forces you to look at parts of you that you didn't think were damaged, or parts of you that you thought were damaged beyond repair. But God is like, let me handle that. But sometimes God puts people in our lives to make us look at those underdeveloped places because he wants us to be better. And sometimes you have to look at it as that person wants me to be better. And you got to want what's better for yourself. But understand, again, without the bad, there can be no good. Without rain, there can't be flowers. There can be trees. And there can be growth. So don't beat yourself up. Build from what you know and allow God to show you how you can use that flaw or that habit or that insecurity or toxic trait to be better in your relationships and in your friendships and your partnerships, and just grow and learn. But I know we always highlight a business or someone we feel like that is doing something great out there, but I want to highlight and spotlight everyone that is in this journey of learning how to love, feed, and pour into themselves, who's learning the true meaning of vulnerability and transparency and being open and honest about what it is that they deserve, what it is that they want, what it is that they need to communicate to make sure that their relationships are effective and better. I want to highlight and spotlight everyone that is learning how to look in the mirror and see what needs to be changed and what needs to be restored in their lives. I want to highlight and spotlight everyone that is trying to be open and honest with themselves as well as others. Because guess what? You got this. And you deserve to keep moving forward and living life despite those disappointments, those rejections, those objections. It's not a race. And of course, the changing and the character development is not going to happen overnight. But do the work. Put in the effort. Not just for that friendship or relationship or partnership, but because it's for you and because you truly and genuinely want it. Because you want to be made whole and right and do better for you. My mom used to always say, do right and right will follow you. You want better than what you've seen growing up, and you want to develop better habits. So I just want to say I'm proud of each and every one of you that may be on that journey, or even those who are like, after watching this video, now I want to actually figure out what it is that I can do to be better and to be more transparent and honest with those around me and myself and be more vulnerable and open. And I'm not so much worried about the other person's reaction, but I want to build on that because that's something that I value and I've learned the power of it, not running from my emotions, but being open to it and feeling them. So thank y'all again for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys' support and waiting in this waiting season that I feel like I've been in. I felt like I wasn't going to be able to do this podcast anymore. I was being transparent and open with you guys. I was going to shut it down. I felt like I wasn't a person that should be sitting up here talking about this stuff when it's things that I'm still struggling with. But God really let me know that you're helping somebody else and be open with them. And that's why I came here to talk about transparency and vulnerability, because it's something that I'm learning. I'm not perfect in it. I still struggle with communicating. I still struggle with being open and honest with people about certain things when it comes to certain situations, but it's power in being honest. So I'm being honest with y'all. Like I said, I thought I wasn't going to be able to do this podcast again. I was just going to be like, you know what? Shut it down. It's over. But I'm glad I came back because I feel like this is a safe space for me. And I hope that you guys will continue to join me on this growth journey and we can go on it together because we're not perfect, but it's a marathon and let's put in the effort to grow together and be all that we're supposed to be. So y'all tune in to the last episodes. I got more content coming for you. I hope that you all are doing great. Thank y'all for all your support. Love y'all.